Hello! Today we've got part 3, the final part of my big interview with Dov. In it, we dig down into what Dov's been doing lately, which is small run, custom artist action figures, which I think is really interesting. It's a market that Dov has sort of carved out, sort of started with the Sucklord, and has really expanded and has a sort of huge following and a lot of people that do it. It's pretty interesting, and we of course dig deeper into the ideas of collecting and other things that are of interest to Dov and me. So here it is. Okay, I'm back with Dov. We are shooting probably another third hour because we've gotten to the point where he's met the Sucklord. They've bonded in this special way that two action figure guys can only do. It's like across the room. And when do you actually first meet him?
I'd actually met him in character in his suit, like at conventions, probably at a Star Wars Celebration or San Diego. I'd have to talk to him. I don't actually remember the first time I met him, in person. It had to be at a.
Well, when did you two of you actually sort of begin discussing how you might mesh in a more in a deeper business? Like, I don't know. You just go.
I don't know that we don't really have a very enmeshed business, and that I think that's the kind of interesting part of it. Like I did distribute his stuff for a while.
Yeah.
He very quickly it got to the point where he could not make enough $40 Gay Empire action figures by hand for me to sell to a store at $20.
Okay.
And he had to pay shipping to get it here. It's like it was good when it started, but if I said like make me 200, his head would explode. Like that's just and as his fan base grew, and his releases got slightly smaller, the price started going up. They were 40, 50, 60, 75, and now the an edition is, I don't know, somewhere in like the $75 to $100 range, I think. And then he does a lot of one-of-a-kind pieces that the quick rack toys are like 50, other ones are 100, 150. Like he couldn't make enough toys for me to sell at wholesale. And this happened, generally speaking, someone would call me and say, "Hey, I make these toys by hand. Will you sell them for me?" And my answer is yes, but like this is not scalable. There has to be another goal here, which is to test market to see if this has legs. Where, let's say you sewed your Mr. Toast dolls by hand, right? So
the first ones were, yes.
okay, but we weren't selling them. But imagine you had to then wholesale those. You had to make 50 or 100. By the time I call you saying like, "Hey, I need 200 more," and you're like, "Fuck no, dude! Like my hands are bleeding." But at that point, you've done enough research. That's enough feedback and market research that you could go to China and make a few thousand, kind of thing. So that's the point where there was a point in there where we started producing his Gay Empire action figure and maintain that $40 price point. And that was really the only thing that was available for wholesale. And we've since done like anything that's kind of what I'll call mass, not handmade. His stickers, his pins, his patches, his muscle figures, his talking plush, DVDs, like those kind of things we've made for him, based over the years on, like for San Diego Comic-Con, we made 1,000 bags, so everybody gets a bag.
Oh.
Proud idiot supporter of the Sucklord's ego. Proudly deceiving the public since 1997. So it says, "This bag is full of bootlegs. Limited edition to 1,000 tote bags." So it's just little things like this. So this is a giveaway for anyone who buys something from us. So long story short, I'm bugging him every year to make an exclusive for us for San Diego.
Okay, because you're
And
you're setting up at San Diego with your distribution business,
correct,
which you display in cases like everything that you have available, but most of this stuff is production items.
correct. And San Diego, so much work, and that was our promotional budget for the year. I just blew it all. I don't know, spend 10, 20 grand, like have all the cases, have everything, and all the buyers. The buyer for every store was at San Diego. That's where they went. I did Toy Fair once, but our buyers, the museum shops, the galleries, the vinyl toy stores, record shops, tattoo parlors, whatever, they were in San Diego. They were not at New York Toy Fair. I
Yeah,
did New York Toy Fair once, and I never did it again.
yeah,
Didn't need to. Just was not. It's just the same old people over and over again. And San Diego is where all the magic happened. But then San Diego kind of changed and started. Designer vinyl kind of left, and so did the buyers, and it just got too hard to get into the show. And um, and then there was the internet. Like, you just didn't have to travel across the country to like shake someone's hand to make sure you got your stuff. Like, so we would try to sell some exclusives to pay the bills. But San Diego was always a loss financially, with these uh, intangible gains, right?
yeah.
Like, you don't know if you actually helped at all, or
But I remember you. I remember I talked to you, and I was always counseling you to stop doing it, and I because and I remember you telling me that there were people that that like the artists needed you there to sort of prove something.
not to prove something, but because you did San Diego Comic Con. So
Yeah.
your product was on display. And if someone said, I want to carry this in my store, you'd say, go talk to Dove. Okay,
Hmm.
but I have hundreds of other companies who are not at the show and doesn't pay for them to be at the show, or they did the show 1 or 2 years and they're like, fuck this. Like, there's, that's just, money down the drain. I'll let, so it was one of the perks that I'd offer to people for distributing their products, is having it on display for 100,000 people to show up and see like what's coming that year. Um, so as the exclusives got, so people would make us exclusives. Now exclusives were generally, um, I generally wouldn't want a second colorway of something. That's something you could get away with. You could make a Frankenstein toast
Yeah.
and it would sell just fine.
Yes.
But for a more expensive vinyl piece, having the blue version when the green one already came out was not that special. And
Sure.
because they were vinyl toys, like edition sizes, they had to be 100 pieces, 50 pieces, of $100 toy. That's a little, it wasn't rough at first, but it got harder and harder as it went. And it got to the point where a vendor who could make that 50 pieces at $100, if it was really good, they could just sell it themselves online. They didn't need to give it to me to sell for them. So the runs of stuff that we were selling got smaller and smaller. And, the Sucklord was a great person to hit up to make me an edition of something because he wanted to be represented there. Um, and incidentally, it was probably San Diego where I first met him in person, because he was
Mm.
working for Hasbro, setting up their booth every year.
Oh, okay.
And actually, he developed the Gay Empire figure while working, for Hasbro, which is kind of funny. So he would have a job like during setup and during teardown, and then in the middle of it, and they were
Okay.
paying his way in his hotel and all that kind of stuff. So he was probably where I first met him, but I'd have to uh, verify. So what happened is that I was always pushing him to make us something, and then it got to one year where he was like, "Dude, I don't know." I threw some money at him, and he made some stuff, and it didn't sell too well, and he didn't like. I don't know. It's like He didn't like how I displayed it because I put a peg, and so they're all on a peg, and like it didn't sell that well, and it was embarrassing, and it's a bad move. I never did that again. If you look at our booth, you look at a peg. There's one figure on the peg, and if I have inventory, it's underneath the table. Don't If people ask like, how many are left, I can say, oh, we're half sold out. There's two left, or something like that, or we have plenty, right? But never just like a whole peg just sitting there. It looks the perception is that it's a failure when it's not. I sell everything. That's not the issue. Um, so so hitting up these other resin bootleg makers was just kind of the obvious like evolution, like Killer Bootlegs and 2-Bit Hack, and all these guys just started making stuff for us because they could make a small edition.
Yeah.
They could make 20 pieces, and they could make it this month. They don't have to go to China. They don't have to, and if you think about the fans that are at San Diego, very few of them care about designer toys, right? But this take on an action figure, there's plenty of people that want that. And so what happened is the vinyl toys, if you go to like our Flickr albums and you look at the show each year and what was offered, you'll see it's all vinyl with one
graph
resin
going
toy,
up and one going down.
and then it gets to the point where one year we had like, I don't know, 10 or 12 releases, and on Wednesday night I sold everything.
Yeah.
Just Tasmanian Devils just came in and I called my wife. I said, you have to go to the warehouse, go pick up this old stock. I need something to fill the booth. I sold everything.
Oh, wow.
And that's when I realized by the next year, it was like, fuck it. I'm here at San Diego to make money and sell as much stuff as I can. And this lost leader of displaying this stuff, like it's not working out. And then come 2016, I actually sell the company. I don't sell DKE toys, but I sell the distribution part of the company to Dispersed, and they take over all the accounts. And I work for them from time to time and still help them manage. And I did vendor relations for them for a while, and I still manage, some difficult personalities for them. And they took over. I had 3 booths at that point. Like they took over 2 of my booths. And then I'm here with my San Diego booth, and it's like, okay, now I'm really gonna go for it. Now I'm gonna be the hub for where all of these, resin and action figure toy makers are gonna premiere their stuff. Like everyone wants their stuff at San Diego.
So that's 2016. You're like, this is my niche now.
Yeah, I think 2014, 15, I have some things, and then by 2016, 2017, there's no vinyl toys left. Maybe one, someone approaches me. I don't recall,
Sure.
a Japanese vinyl, something like that. And then the booth starts looking like an art gallery. It's the setup with the black drape on the table, raised tables, 2 tiers with stands, and 100 different figures on display with tags. And we realize that we've stumbled into something that is unique, is appropriate for San Diego Comic-Con. It appeals. The art people like it. The fans of the individual artists like it. Vintage action figure people like it. It borrows, treads heavily, on Star Wars themes, Simpsons, and pop culture, which is kind of an interesting full circle for me, because I go from like Star Wars toys, which, I then think are soulless because they have no, artists, like obviously artists worked on them, but it's just a product.
Yes.
And then go completely to the other side of it, where it's like pure art toy, from the imagination of an artist. And then I've just kind of settled back, the equilibrium pulls me back to the middle with these handmade artist figures that borrow heavily on pop culture. And then there's even a spectrum within those figures, right? There are, on one side, there are the artists who make very specific reproductions of what a character from this 80s sitcom would look like as a 3 3/4 inch action figure. And the only interpretation there is like, this is what they would look like as an action figure. not much else. And we don't carry any of those.
Oh,
Generally, I will
okay.
not carry those
Okay.
because a lot of those guys tend to only make one of a kinds. And also because it is using a logo of a show or a movie, and it's a piece of art. I'm not doubting that it's not a piece of art. The people who make it are artists, and I have plenty of those pieces in my collection. However, I can't put myself behind it to sell it because, excuse me, because of how infringing it is. Because
Got it. You don't want to
it,
get in the middle of that battle.
correct. So
Yeah.
it's like um, the, when Stranger Things came out, I had like 4 or 5 people come to me and say, "Hey, I want to make a Stranger Things action figure for you." I'm like, "I can't do that. You can put a Stranger Things logo on there, right?" But then Manny from Special Ed says, "I'm going to do Stranger Wars. I'm going to do Princess L and take 11 and put little Princess Leia buns." It's like, okay, that's kind of the middle ground. That's the example of the artist doing something transformative with the work, either mashing it up, doing their take on it, and that work to me is very recognizable as the individual's work. Whereas the
Got it.
where the
It's a particular Manny kind of joke or take. It's
but you can
Manny's take
but
as opposed to
like the Sucklord, you can look at Manny's work from across the room, and Carlos designs his card. They have a specific look to them, and
yeah,
that's the sign of a good artist. When you can look at it across the room, you know whose work that is, right?
sure.
And then the other end of the spectrum is someone who has created a universe all to their own, who has made an action figure of something that does not call on any pop culture, and it's just like their own universe. And sometimes they'll use parts of the kit bash from vintage figures to evoke that kind of feeling, but it's completely their creation from their universe. And we do sell some of that, but it also doesn't sell very well at a convention because you have to appreciate that artist's work for that artist.
So
So
you're
most of what we sell is in that middle ground.
okay. So you specifically curate what goes in the booth, and certain people you'll just say, "Man, this is not my thing. It's too much your take," or "Man, this is too much." Just sort of not a knockoff, but just sort of a straight lane right off of a show.
Uh, I mean, I don't know if you call that curation. That's a territory that I can't legally go to. I've been advised, like, stay away from that.
Okay, so it is. So it's a large part of that's legal as opposed to personal preference.
Well, if I start selling a Stranger Things figure just because this guy can get the figure to market in 2 weeks,
Yeah.
right? Where the actual Stranger Things figure is not available for another year, the licensee for Stranger Things is walking around the show, right? Stranger Wars, that's not something that would ever exist,
It's parody.
right? That's Manny's take on it, right? That's not the same way a gay empire would never exist. Like, no one is going to take a pink stormtrooper and add a big crotch to it, and give him like a Chippendales, like, bow tie and like, you know, uh, that's not going to exist ever. Um, and there's other things I do. I make sure that all the pieces are signed and numbered. The logos have to be either a parody of a logo. We can't have confusion in the marketplace, basically. And
Got
then
it.
when we market it, we're saying, like, this is a handmade, hand cast, hand painted, limited edition, 3.75 inch, uh, edition of 20, signed and numbered by the artist.
How
Yeah,
much how much grief do you get for do you get grief over from copyright holders or anything?
so far none.
Okay.
That's not true. I got one cease and desist, and that's because the guy called it what it was.
Hmm.
And it didn't need to be called that. It could have been called anything else and it would have been fine, but he used the name. Not the logo, but he used the name. And the
Hmm.
company was small enough that they didn't understand. And I said, "These are handmade. Like, you can't tell because it looks amazing. It looks like they took your stuff and, like, they don't know. Like, if they're not educated, and they don't realize that this is art. If it's too good, they think like, holy shit, like this, our stuff's showing up in Target, like this is not okay,
Yeah.
and then say, well, hey, there's only 50 of these in the world. Like they're $100. It's not like a $5 PVC toy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I understand.
So, so do I curate? I don't know if I curate as much as, yes, I guess I don't know. People come to me with ideas, and I'm trying to find things that will work at that particular show. So there is a bias, right?
So you do offer suggestion.
I'm not art directing, but when they come to me with something, I can tell them if that will work for me or it won't.
Okay.
Okay, so Stranger Things won't work for me. You want to do a mashup? Oh, I want to do a Star Wars Stranger Thing mashup. Okay, that works for me.
Okay.
Like, am I looking at pictures along the way and then saying, oh no, I can't carry that? Like, no, stuff shows up, and some of it's great, some of it's okay. It all sells, so it doesn't matter. I don't love everything that we sell, but the interesting thing about it is how each of these artists has a completely different skill set, and how they have to draw upon help from other people. I mean, some people can paint and do their own card backs. Some people have to have someone else design it. Some people can sculpt. Some people have to get other people to sculpt. Some people know how to kit bash. Some people can cast. Some people don't even cast. They have someone else cast their figures. They paint them. Some people don't, are just, the Sucklord's a conceptual artist. Like, the execution of his toy is the least important part of the process, right? So there are other people who come up with a concept, have someone else sculpt it, someone else cast it, someone else paint it, someone else design the card, put it all together, and they call it their toy. And there's some people in the community who've complained about that, and it's like, no, dude, that's art. It's like, you think Jeff Koons is like on a ladder with a,
He is not.
with a blowtorch, like, like soldering a balloon dog, like, that's 20 feet tall. Like, no fucking way. Like, he just stands there and goes like, oh, that's not the right color pink. Like, I said, do this color. Like, that's it. Like, anyway, so that's pretty much what we're doing now. I would say about 4 conventions a year. And I was supposed to be semi-retired after selling the distribution part of the business, but that didn't seem to ever happen.
Retired.
The idea was that I couldn't continue working 60 hours a week doing the distribution, and then have another kid. Because as it was, I would leave in the morning, and then I'd arrive when the kid's asleep, and then it's like on the weekend I'm dead. Like, what's the point of having a family at that point? So we wanted to have a second kid. Like, the business had to go. But also, as you can see throughout like this little history, it's like every 5 to 7 years I've had to pivot slightly.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up pivoting naturally, but the idea of pivoting into something that I was going to work 40, 50 hours a week on distribution and then do something else for 10 or 20 hours a week to try to grow that whatever the next thing was going to be. That was not in the cards. I mean, I couldn't, not and continue to function as a normal human being, like, because I didn't have a scalable business. I was pretty much doing everything, as far as like sales and invoicing and tracking down people for money, and I'm handling like all of this stuff, and I have someone doing accounting and doing office stuff and people packing, but the kind of technology and infrastructure that I would need to scale up the business and to go from 5 employees or 4 employees to like 10, 12, 20 employees, like, that's not me. Like, I wasn't
the distribution business.
Correct. Like,
Yeah.
I never went to business school. I went to film school. Like, I'm not gonna, it's not fun for me. When Scott came into the warehouse, Scott Kinsley, who's dispersed, who bought the company for me. He looked at the warehouse and he's like, oh, it's like, we can put this here and we can do this here and we can, this is a puzzle that was fascinating for him to solve. I walk in the warehouse and I think it's horrifying. It's like, oh, look at this fucking mess. Like, keep track of where everything is. Like, it's just, but this is like, a mathematical puzzle for him to solve. But, him getting on the phone and like talking to an artist, like that to him was horrifying. Like that was,
Really?
it was just a perfect, like, I'll handle the artist, you handle the business, like that. So for, the first few years that really worked very well until, I don't know,
Um,
until.
okay, so you've been doing this for a few years now, and you pretty much have this territory staked out, and no one is there anyone else trying to move in at all, or have you sort of kind of got your roster of people down there, and you've got your spaces, and it's pretty stable, you think?
I mean, I don't have any exclusive deals with anybody.
Yeah.
I'm not locking anyone into anything. Anyone can do whatever they want. Um,
But
it's a super niche market, so I'm not sure that it like looks that lucrative to other people. Like, let's say Designer Con is the exception. So
yeah,
if you have something at my booth, it doesn't necessitate you having your own booth. But there are
yeah,
people who have their own booth, and so they might not do an exclusive for me at that show. But some people want stuff at my booth and they have a booth. But for San Diego, no. Like, who's doing that? Like,
no, yeah,
no, nobody. Like, we're just kind of the one, little unicorn in the corner that, and you see it as the show gets more corporate. I see the looks on people's faces. They're like, I walked the whole show. I bought this print or whatever. Like, this is the most important thing that I've seen. Like, they've stumbled across something creative that inspires them, and you see the looks on their faces. I've seen the magic happen. You know,
hmm.
in Killer Bootlegs, he made his little Andy Warhol Campbell soup can with the droid legs,
Sure.
and it'd been done before. He just I'm not sure if he was the first one to do it or not, but you just saw the look on people's faces. Like this, they had every Star Wars figure, right? There's nothing at that show, and I remember this couple came up, and I forget, it was a $75 figure, and the husband looked at her and said, "Why do you want?" She's like, "I want this."
Oh, really?
But you saw like this had meaning to her, right? It was Star Wars, it was Warhol, it did that, had that same thing that I was talking to about, like the nostalgia and like the adult and the kid, and it just all converged, and you just see it happen, and I don't know, it's rewarding, when you see people, they get something that they really want, and they're jazzed, and they tell you, "Oh, I have all of these figures in my collection." Like, you know.
Hmm. Um, where's collecting heading?
Oh man, not very far.
Yeah.
I mean,
I mean, because we've seen things like Barbie go through booms and busts, and
okay,
we've
well,
seen.
Barbie is going through a bust right now because little girls are realizing that this is not a realistic, depiction of what women look like, and they're saying like, "Why do I want to play with this?"
Yeah, but
Like,
but
this is no longer their ideal, and so the market is tanking there. But also the people who are collecting them, who had nostalgia for them as a kid, already have, because I've bought these collections before, rooms filled with hundreds of Barbies. They
yeah,
have Star Wars Barbie and Star Trek Barbie and X-Files Barbie and this princess and Christmas this and this. And it's like, you can't make anything new. Well, I could make cool new Barbies, but Mattel doesn't know how to make cool new Barbies. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
well, I mean, but the one thing I do know is Monster High is like, I mean, at least it was crazy, crazy,
I
and
can't fit
Bratz.
right. There's always an ebb and flow, but those are kids playing with them.
Sure,
There's not a
sure.
market currently that I know of for like collectible Bratz figures selling for thousands of dollars. I could be wrong, but I
There
don't.
probably will be at some point, though.
Maybe when the kids who grew up on it decide to come back and buy it, but that's going to happen less and less because most of this
Really?
stuff is being sold to a graying audience who, I mean, millennials want to own nothing, right? Everything is digital. They get their music, their news, their magazine, everything's on their phone. They most of their social interaction is online, in social media. Having a photo, the number of millennials that come up to the booth, snap, take a photo and go, "That's amazing," and then they walk away. Like they only need that photo to be happy, and they post it on their Instagram. And the number of people that actually need to own that. First of all, millennials are broke, right? And it seems like they're going to forever be broke because
all those things.
We're broken in so many ways. And upward mobility is over unless there's some radical change. And so, who's buying floppy comics? Like comic book, I mean, that's over. Baseball cards, it's like over. Like Garbage Pail Kids are having a comeback, but that's from people in their 40s, 50s, right? And you can kind of track it. Like Wacky Packages, like peaked 10 years ago. And
I guess the question is what are children going into stores and buying that they're going to then be nostalgic? What? But I mean,
they're not.
They're not. First edition Harry Potter is worth a fortune.
Adults are buying that. Investors are buying that. Kid is not buying that.
That's true.
That's too new. I mean, as far as it's the most valuable modern first edition ever, but that is not. That's not a kid who read it, when he was 5 and now he's 50 and going back and buying it. When that happens, if that happens, that $10,000 first edition is going to be $1 million because the first edition of that book, in hardcover is so rare. Like that's going to be insane. But most likely, and I can't say for sure, but that generation is not going to associate the owning that book when they can just 99 cents get it online and read it on their Kindle, or you know what I mean. It's like,
so you kind of doubt that the kids that are growing up are going to have this nostalgia for physical objects.
I mean,
because it isn't showing up in 20-year-olds. I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you.
I hope so. On one hand, for my own survival, but for the world and for these manufactured needs and wants, and the need to buy things. I don't know that's this. I look at what my kids buy, and then it's just they play with it until they destroy it, and it just becomes trash. Like it's not good for the world. I mean, it's good for GDP. For things to be destroyed. Destroying a whole country and hundreds of thousands of people dying is good for GDP, like bombs and bullets. But it's kind of the same thing. It's like, but what I read the other day, or something my wife said, it's like every piece of plastic ever made still exists in some form. Like it's still here, right? So it's like, do we need more stuff? Like, I mean, I'm someone who just survives on stuff, right? People show up at the door, they sell me their stuff. I take this stuff, I sell it to someone else. It's like, I move stuff around. So it's kind of like the coal miner that thinks that, that's like, go coal. It's like, well, you're killing yourself. You're going to die of black lung, but go coal. So I'm kind of like that dude also. It's like, yeah, we want toys to exist forever and, collectibles and nostalgia, but it's not really good for the planet. Like, I mean, obviously, look, the cream of the crop will always have value.
The good stuff will be the good stuff.
The good stuff will be the good stuff. the question is, what's going to happen to the rest of it? And the rest of it's already kind of worthless. It's really only the cream of the crop that is, really, set off into the stratosphere, and then things just kind of go down. So when I was a kid, you go to like autograph shows and you'd see like Humphrey Bogart or Clark Gable. Like autographs were like $500, $1,000. And
Are all those autographs the same price now?
they're $300. They're $200. Who
Really?
generation doesn't know who Humphrey Bogart is? Okay, but if you have Marilyn Monroe, James Dean, Bruce Lee, Elvis, the Beatles,
Got it.
that stuff, boom, boom, boom. That's going to go up forever. I mean, that's like blue chip.
So you have to move into this. There's another level of icon that's above.
Yeah, I mean, first appearance of Batman or Spider-Man, like those are, just high grade copies, $500,000, $1 million. The other 50 years of Spider-Man comics, relatively worthless.
I mean,
relatively. I mean, okay,
yeah.
fine. So you have like 50s, and, 50s, 60s, yes.
Yeah.
70s, a little bit. High grade always separates from
high grade always, yes.
Right? You have a comic that comes out today graded 9.8. Yes, that's going to, you just sit on that and wait till it explodes. That's going to be up here. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
yeah, no, I know what you're saying.
It happens in every hobby. It's like when 80% of the market is like in this condition, the top 1 or 2% that's up here is always going to get crazy money. It's always happened. Stamps, coins, comics, movie posters, you name it. Like that's when the blue chip investor, when money starts coming to the hobby from, hedge fund managers, that's when the price goes crazy.
When the Rolex watch collectors show up.
Right.
Huh.
So is there a future? I mean, Topps just released a blockchain version of Garbage Pail Kids on their site, where you can buy
digital
virtual Garbage Pail Kids, and you can trade them and you can sell them. God. Okay, so you had the same reaction I do. Well, there's people, presumably buying these things and maybe making money on them, or Topps has tried this before with like e-tops, where you would buy the baseball cards, and it was like they had all this legalese because it was kind of like they were selling a security, and because they were holding it for you.
Yeah.
And then you had it in your portfolio, and you could ask for it to be sent to you, but you could also trade it and change title from like you to me by filling out this form. And there were cards that people bought for $10, all of a sudden selling for $100. But then magically everything crashed and everything's worth $1. You know what I mean? It's like, don't quote me on that. Do your own research.
No. I mean,
comes sues me, but
like the whole weird Bitcoin thing, which started as nothing and now it's worth a fortune.
Now it's worth half of the fortune that it used to be. But yes.
Oh, is it? Is it okay?
Yeah, I mean, it went up and then it's settled down, but it's not. I try to wrap my head around like the whole decentralized nature of it. It's like that someone has created something digitally that just exists in the world, and then there's one guy who lost his hard drive and lost $70 million, and he was rooting around at the dump like looking for his hard drive because to me that. How someone else doesn't know that and can't just go take like, is it so decentralized that someone can't figure out like what that code is for $70 million?
No, not with the blockchain stuff. No,
I don't.
No.
That so.
No, I mean it's indecipherable. Yeah, the way blockchain works
now. Okay, but what happened?
That stuff. I don't know.
What happens when someone deciphers it 10 years from now?
The thing about, I mean, at least my understanding of at least the technology of the encoding is you're never, the blockchain, the way it chunks out, it's it's you can't replicate it
until it doesn't.
I mean, just mathematically, you
Yeah,
can't.
but
You
you
know,
look at
whether
look at the
how the world feels about it is a separate issue.
but look at the computing power today that you have on your phone is more powerful than what they used to get people onto the moon.
Yes.
Okay, so we're talking about like, you know, are we 10 years away from someone being able to crack the blockchain? Like, I mean, you telling me that technology, I don't buy it. I don't, I said it here first, people.
Okay, I mean, this is an argument, and neither of us is I mean, I have some mathematical knowledge and training, but not enough to make the statistical argument. Okay, we're not going to argue blockchain because you and I are never going to, neither of us knows enough to get to a, we'll leave that for bigger brains.
But the answer to your question is, I don't know.
No, but Deb, you're supposed to know.
I don't know.
You're the oracle I come to when I have these big questions.
You'd hope. Well, I guess the answer is the cream of the crop is always going to be worth money.
Yeah.
And things go in waves. So, like I said, wacky packages peaked about 10 years ago, where you needed a complete set. All your die cuts would be 100, 200 grand, like crazy money. And now garbage pail kids are starting to go crazy now. So let's say I bought an Atom Bomb PSA 10. That's the perfect, specimen of it for, let's say like $400, $500, 2015. Yeah. Now it's, somewhere between $3,000 and $6,000.
What?
So,
oh, God.
So people as long as you can stay ahead of the trend,
yeah,
right? People with money, once they get to that point, it will start to, and you can see the trend, when Star Wars got popular, Turtles, Transformers, G.I. Joe, like it just has to do with the age of the collector, how old they were when they first experienced it, and when they start to have some disposable income. And in the 90s, 12-inch G.I. Joes from the 60s just went crazy. Yeah. Now it's like, then the guys kind of get everything that they want, and then it sort of tapers off. When I was a kid, all that Western shit was worth money.
Yeah.
Hopalong Cassidy, Howdy Doody, Gene Autry.
Can't give it away now.
No, people like, there's no nostalgia for that at all. All those people have died. Their collections have come back on the market. Nobody wants it. But tastes also change. So Western culture might come back with, a vengeance, and maybe that's going to be kitschy cool. Like vinyl records have gone insane.
Yeah. Right. And who would have guessed that you could fill your car 1,000 times with whatever vinyl you would want. Dude. And there's all sorts, and it's like normal records, right?
Normal records, that's right. And that if you have sealed first edition of stuff, that is astronomical. But normal records are just worth a ton of money. Just people collecting Bowie or Queen or Led Zeppelin, whatever. All those things that you'd think there's just so much of, right? Are just average prices are more than they should be. But most of them if they get played, they get scratched, they go away, get trashed, and then there's the issue of the sound. I mean, there's people who like that sound better than a CD, but CDs now are fucking garbage.
Well, and the VHS tape thing.
I could not have predicted that. I mean,
we look at it as a garbage. It's like they're garbage. I wouldn't even look at them at the flea market. And now,
but Jurassic Park is still worthless. But if you have the '80s horror films, yes, hundreds of dollars per title, right, sure.
Right stuff.
So
I guess that's the point of collecting is you cannot predict what are the things that are gonna come back around.
Well, people who are trying to make money at it are trying to predict.
Yeah.
Okay, but the way, culture just kind of moves in the direction it goes. It used to be that the goal of most, middle class families were to, have a kitchenette and a dining room and a second set of plates and a second set of, china and silver,
China
cabinet, right? It's
Yeah.
like when my grandparents died, like they had like this brown piece of furniture that my mom talked about, like, oh, this is, they paid, thousands of dollars. They paid $2,000 for this
For
thing,
their hutch.
right? It's uh, like just to donate it, you'd have to pay money to get someone to come get rid of it. Like
Firewood.
nobody wants brown furniture. All of that stuff, Waterford Crystal and all of those crystal and china companies and they're either going out of business or they're on their last legs, because the stuff, this is just a rule about like, the disposability of products, like that stuff that was made in that era lasts forever. Like, a bone china plate like lasts forever, and people die and that stuff coming back on the market, and the companies can't compete with all the used stuff that's out there. So not only do people not want it, but now they can't even sell, and all those companies, they're done. They're just, nobody wants that. Dining room tables, like, and so the TVs have changed, right? They used to be like this thick furniture, for a tube TV, right? You can't give that shit away. That's firewood, right? Everyone wants long and thin, thin now because all the TVs are thin. So it just, you can't predict those kind of things. And then, maybe things will come back. Nostalgia is a weird thing. So, Scott Zillner, like he does the Power Morphicon conventions. Sure. So I always wonder about Power Rangers. Like, I wonder about Star Wars. Is Star Wars good, or did I just see it at the right time in my life where it had an impact on me? Because I go to Power Morphicon and there's thousands of people here who just watched Power Rangers, which is ostensibly this horrible show, right? It looked like garbage, and they saw it at the right time and they think it's amazing. And it's never stopped, it's 30 seasons of it, whatever, it keeps going. So at some point, and those first season of toys, of American toys, are still relatively cheap.
Really?
Yeah, the ones in the little triangular boxes, $20, $30. They're not expensive. A lot of the Japanese stuff that it was transformed from is expensive.
Yeah.
But time will tell. You see that stuff that used to be very common that would come in collections I'd pay $5 for, could be worth hundreds of dollars. But again, it's like that generation has to, as long as they keep collecting, I don't know.
Yeah, with some stuff, it's going to be, the media is always going to be the thing. They're going to want to watch the show. Watching the show is the thing.
And that's precisely why
you wonder about millennials.
Why comic books, like the origin, the original comics and the first appearances of all of those characters are worth so much money. It's really because of the success of Marvel movies. Because it's like, if Nicolas Cage is going to play Superman, then he wants to buy Action Comics, or Superman #1 or whatever it is, right? It's like, and then you get these people into the mix who are start spending $500,000, $1 million to buy these things. Whereas like when I was a kid, Iron Man #1, like the Marvel Universe totally like tilted, like it just because of the nature of how bad Marvel was doing and how they licensed, they kind of gave X-Men away. Like when I was a kid, it was X-Men. There was like 4 or 5 X-Men titles. It was like X-Force and Uncanny X-Men and X-Men this and X-Men. And then in some bad deal, they gave away X-Men to Fox.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, when it was time to like make movies, they're like, well, we have Iron Man. We're going to push Iron Man and Avengers, and we're going to stop making, so I think they got down to 1 monthly title of X-Men. When I was a kid in the 80s, X-Men in the 90s, like X-Men was everything. That was the hottest Marvel property ever, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think I mean, that's a whole. That's a whole. I mean, we could unpack how the Marvel movie phenomenon worked out.
But I'm just
I
saying,
mean, I
like,
think they sold off Spider-Man and X-Men because those were the most valuable things.
Sure.
And then when they started to try to do Marvel Studios, they were like, what, what else do we have laying around? And then
True.
they went and made a good movie.
Okay, but Iron Man #1 when I was a kid was relatively worthless.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh, is that it's good now?
Yeah, it's good now.
Good now.
Maybe it's not $1 million book. It's not that rare, but it's good.
Yeah, well, because that was the thing
same thing as Ant-Man.
And
right?
with Guardians, the first book of Guardians, you could have filled up a station wagon with them for
Right.
for $100. I mean, it was a okay book, but I mean, you probably pay $5 for them, and they're 500 now.
So Peter Porker, the Spectacular Spider-Ham, right?
Yeah.
Was a Star comic that was like worth $1.
Yeah.
Right. And then that great animated Spider-Man movie came out.
And that's worth
like a 9.8's $500. First appearance of Peter Porker. Like,
oh my God.
And that's what people want. So
I was making fun of Star Comics just today.
Were you really?
Because I had a cereal box where on the offer on the back was was a free Star Comics offer, which I don't think had Peter Porker on it, sadly.
All right, so I'll tell you like one last story. My battery's gonna die. Got like 10% left. Okay, so it's the story about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #1.
Sure.
Okay? And this has to do with my age. And there are things that I collect because of their accessibility and affordability, like Star Wars. And if I was 10 years older, I probably would have all those wacky packages, and I probably would collect, vintage pulp art, right?
Sure.
If I was 20, 30 years older, I hope that I would be buying Norman Rockwell's, right? But, what you could have had for 10 grand is $1 million today, right?
Sure.
But that era of illustration is my favorite. But I don't collect it because I can't afford it and it's a bad value.
Sure.
Right? You used to be able to go to a pulp convention and they just, for $100 you can buy an original paperback cover, Amazing Fantasy, or whatever it is, like Amazing, what was it? Amazing Stories? No, I don't know. Whatever.
You couldn't buy those pulp paintings for $100. You could not.
Stacks.
You could not.
You look at those people, the guy that runs illustration mag.
You're talking about like maybe the men's magazine garbage, but
and the men's magazine. Look at who the artists are from the men's magazine.
Yeah, I know Norm Saunders and all those characters, but you couldn't buy the science fiction stuff.
Okay, fine, not the sciance fiction stuff, but the men's magazine stuff. That stuff is amazing.
Yes, I completely agree.
There's like Basil Gogos and they were all working in that genre. Like, I don't know. Anyway.
Yes, I know what you're saying.
All right, so Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comes out in '86. I'm 13, right?
Yeah.
There's only 1,000 copies made. So oversized black, cover, easily damaged. By the time I knew about Turtles, maybe I'm 14. It's like 1987. That's already worth $100.
Yep.
Can't afford it.
Yep. I remember being at Comic-Con, walking around looking up, and there's one up there probably that first year, and I'm like, shit, how's that book? That book's already worth some money, and like what is crazy. What is that?
And so this is maybe a cautionary tale, how like instead of spending money on all this other garbage, I should just bought the cream of the crop, right? Because that $100, right?
Yeah.
I have a third printing, and I have a first printing of #2, right? And then, then Playmates came out, the cartoon and the pizza and all that, and then it went crazy. Like the black and white, like very dark comic got replaced by this, color pizza eating turtle. So by the time I was 18, maybe it was just pulling a number out of my ass, it was like $500. Couldn't afford that. I'm in my 20s and it's like hovering around 1,000. right? It's always just
Just out of reach.
too far away. Turtles is at its nadir just like totally in the dumps, doing nothing. They're
Oh, crashed.
and then I think Peter Laird sells what the remaining rights he has to Nickelodeon for something like $60 million. Seems super cheap. And Kevin Eastman had already gone bankrupt and sold his rights to whatever. Like he's out of the picture.
He's gone.
And then I say to Sarah, it would be a great investment. Now, I don't do this. I don't like invest like that. But it's on my mind. It's something I always wanted. There's only 20 copies, let's say at a 9.8. It's very hard to get in good condition. There's only 1,000 copies made. And as this this frenzy for first appearance comics goes, it's probably the rarest and the best Copper Age book that's out there.
Sure.
Right? Because there's nothing else, except for maybe like Deadpool, Guardians of the Galaxy, stuff where everything else is like 50 and 75 years old that we're watching today. Thor, Captain America, Iron Man, Batman, Superman. So like probably the best modern book out there. And I'd say to Sarah, like, if we could get a few copies at like 10 grand each, that's going to be a $50,000 book.
Okay.
And she's like, I don't know. We shouldn't spend that kind of money. What are you going to do with it? Right? Is it just going to be in a drawer? You collect art, something you hang on the wall? Like, what? And then she says to me, when it's $50,000, are you going to sell it? That's like, yeah, but then we have to get like 2 or 3. Okay. So I start putting my feelers out there. I look online. It's already like $15,000 or $18,000. Okay.
Yeah.
One sells for. Oh, then a book dealer I know calls me. He says, "There's one. It's $24,000." I talked to Sarah. I was like, this is a no-go. It's always out of range. It's always beyond.
You're ready to spend 10 G's, and the only one you can find is 24 G's. Okay.
Okay. So there's a guy who's got one, who had one also for 27, but then one. No, it sells for 27 on the comic fan site, whatever, and then like the guy who has it now, he wants 30. Like the price just went up on me. Okay, and then at this point, I'm absolutely not. It's like whatever thoughts in my mind. I'm like, I'm not old enough. I don't have that kind of discretionary income to drop into a collectible. It's not, even though I know it's still going to be worth 50. Buying something for 24 to worth 50 again, like she's like, you're going to sell it, you're going to keep it in a drawer, this is not a good use of funds, like this is bad. 2 come up on Heritage, and we're talking about it again and again, and they both, with tax and buyer's premium, they both sell at 40. And then it's like, okay, I'm done, like I can't afford it. I don't collect high-end comics. That's not what I do.
Yep.
$40,000 is what I could spend in years of buying art. Like that's not, no, right?
You tap out.
Well, less than a year later, 100 grand. I'm telling you, there's only 1,000 copies. It's the best Copper Age book out there, right? 80 grand, 90 grand, consistently selling 80 to 100 grand. And then all the ones that people bought for 20 or 30 are starting to show up on the market. All those people that have the first appearance of Batman, Spider-Man, that have that, they want a turtle too. I knew that. I didn't know it was going to be a $100,000 book. Right? But I could have had it. And
24K, you could have had it.
Yeah. And 100 grand. And then I just look and it's like, I will never have that. I don't need it, right? I'm okay with a second printing that I can like look through, or third printing, whatever I got. Like, And she's right. What are you going to do with it? It's going
And
to sit in a drawer.
if you'd have bought that 24K, would you send it off to Heritage at the 100K number?
Well, that's that whole thing. It's like you have something that's so expensive, it starts becoming a liability.
So you probably would have, if you saw that 100K number, you just shipped it right off to Heritage.
I don't know. It depends what else is going on in my lifetime at that time. And then the other question is like, is it going to be worth 250? Like, has it peaked? I don't think it's peaked yet. If you look at the numbers for how many, Avengers #1s are out there and Iron Man's, I mean, there's thousands and thousands of copies graded, right? There's only 1,000 copies of this comic, and at a 9.8, there's only 30 or so, out there in the world. They're not gonna it's just.
There's no more showing up.
Okay, so then you have to say, well, the kids who are watching, my son is like watching Turtles. He's 6 years old. What happens when he's in his 40s?
Turtles is on a perennial 10-year cycle, forever, until we're dead.
Okay, so then that's a $1 million book eventually.
Get that 100,000.
It's out of my range. It's always out of my range.
Sell the house, 100,000. Do it. Do it tomorrow. Do it. Yeah. I guess we're gonna end on that story, because a story where you talk about losing $76,000.
Thanks a lot.
I will tell one very, very quick story. Years ago, we went out. Me and my buddy Steve. We were buying a lot of Disneyland stuff, buy and sell, because Disneyland was good and I liked it and it was a good moneymaker. This lady contacted us off an ad or something. We went out to her house. She had just a couple brochures, nothing that interesting, but she also had all of the Walt Disney production sound effect equipment. Like
Whoa.
All these crazy devices that they could make noises in the sound effects department in the 40s. And we're like, I don't know, because her dad had worked there. I don't know. We just had no idea what the stuff was, what it might be worth, who would care. And of course, 5 years later, so we leave. 5 years later, we see it appears in one of the high-end auctions. Auction estimate, I don't know, $100,000. Some
right.
crazy, some sort of crazy number, and you're like, we were in the house with that stuff. If we'd have known any better, we'd have probably tried to do the work.
I mean, I think every collector has has a story like that. I coulda, I shoulda. I should have bought Disneyland attraction posters when they were a couple $100 each.
There was never a time where they were a couple $100 each. There was not that time.
Absolutely, I remember them. I passed them up.
Well,
maybe not.
That was a mistake that day, because I've been, as long as because you and I have had this argument before. I've been dealing in Disneyland stuff since probably 91.
Okay, Haunted Mansion and Pirates of the Caribbean, maybe, but some of the other ones were cheap.
Disneyland Hotel, that was always the cheapest, and the cheapest you'd ever see it kicking around was like $300 or $400.
Fine. How much is it today?
I don't know.
3,000?
No.
Dude,
No.
Did you see that last Van Eaton auction?
Which auction?
The Van Eaton one, where the guy had the complete set of.
Yeah, stuff did really well in that.
Stuff did really well. I mean, we're talking about the average Pirates or Haunted Mansion is like $5,000 to $10,000.
Yeah, but Mansion's been $5,000 for a long time. I mean,
how long is a long time?
10 years.
Okay.
Yeah, no. Mansion, I think Mansion is going to be. I mean, it's got to be like 10, 20, 30. It'll be. Talk about a thing that's going to only go up in price. Mansion attraction poster.
That's another one, because Sarah always wanted that one.
You want to spend money, buy subs or buy Mansion. That's money.
Yeah.
Money. Well, Dov, it was great having you on here. We spent a lot of time talking about the Vader project. Thank you.
Who spent time talking about it?
Oh yeah, neither of us did, but we will someday.
Okay.
Someday we'll do another show and we'll talk about some of your art shows and more of your art things and uh, all the great stuff you do. Thanks for being my guest and being the longest one of these yet.
Thanks for having me. I
And
think. If anyone is still watching.
okay, oh, they'll watch. Okay, Dov.
All right, bye everybody. Thanks again.
Well, thank you, Dove. That was quite the extra large interview. I'm sure that Dove and I will be sitting down again for more conversations because I really enjoy to hear what Dove has to say. I'm Dan Goodsell. Thanks for stopping by, and feel free to check out my other videos and interviews. Thanks.